Maybe you clicked out of curiosity. Or maybe, without knowing, you were looking for a quiet corner where words arrive slowly and even silence feels like part of the story. I wrote this with care, stitching together memories, pain, and small discoveries, hoping that at some point you might see a piece of yourself here. If that happens, even just for a moment, stay, listen as far as you can, and if you feel like leaving a small sign, a hi, a thought, or even a tiny heart, sometimes that's enough to make this space warmer. Maybe even share it with someone who needs it. I never thought I'd end up back in my parents' house at 27. I'd always imagined I'd move out, get a job, and only come back for holidays like everyone else. But life doesn't always care about your plans. When my company downsized last year, I was one of the first to go. I burned through my savings faster than I expected. Rent in Denver isn't cheap, and neither is pride. So, I packed my life into 3 suitcases and dragged myself back to the house I grew up in. The thing about moving back in with my parents is, it's like being 16 again, but worse. Back then, I still had hope. Now, I was unemployed, broke, and constantly reminded that I didn't belong. My dad didn't yell often, but when he did, it was like thunder. He had this way of making the air feel heavy, like even the walls were afraid of him. My mom, on the other hand, didn't yell at all. She just looked at me like I was something stuck to her shoe. Disgust mixed with disappointment, mixed with the tiniest bit of amusement, like watching a car wreck. That night was Savannah's birthday. Savannah, my older sister. If I was the forgotten shadow of the family, she was the sun. The house looked like something out of a magazine. White roses on every table, gold balloons floating toward the vaulted ceiling, crystal glasses that my mom never even let me touch when I was a kid. They even hired a string quartet to play in the backyard, where the pool lights shimmered like a luxury resort. I hovered near the edge of the living room, holding a plastic cup like a security blanket. I could feel the warmth of the chandeliers, smell the champagne, and hear the laughter that never included me. "Try to smile for once," my mom whispered sharply as she passed by, balancing a tray of hors d'oeuvres. "You're living here for free. The least you can do is look pleasant." My dad chimed in without even looking at me. "Stand up straight, and for God's sake, don't talk to anyone about your situation. People don't need to know we're housing a failure." The words stung, but not because they were new, because they were normal. I glanced at Savannah in the center of the room. She was glowing, in a silver dress that caught every flicker of light, holding a glass of champagne like it belonged in her hand. People gravitated toward her, laughing at everything she said, complimenting her success at the law firm, her upcoming award nomination, and her perfect life. I felt like an extra in a movie I didn't audition for, like a prop, pushed into a corner, there only to make her spotlight look brighter. And in that moment, surrounded by music, laughter, and champagne bubbles, I realized something bitterly true. This party wasn't just not mine. This house wasn't mine. This family wasn't mine. I was just borrowing air. I kept to the corner, sipping from my plastic cup like it could make me invisible. The laughter and clinking of champagne glasses felt miles away, even though I was standing right there. Then, the music paused. Savannah stood on the small stage my dad had rented for the evening, her silver dress catching every camera flash. She raised her glass and smiled that perfect photogenic smile. "First," she began, "I want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate me." The crowd laughed politely. "Another year older, another year of crushing it at the firm." Applause erupted. I felt my face flush, even though she wasn't looking at me yet. "And of course," she continued, "I want to thank my amazing parents for always supporting me. You two gave me everything I needed to shine." My mom beamed. My dad puffed his chest. "And then—" Savannah's eyes finally landed on me, still half hidden near the wall. "I want to thank my baby brother for reminding me what rock bottom looks like." The room went silent for half a second, then exploded in laughter. "He's living with Mom and Dad again," she said, feigning sympathy. "Unemployed, basically homeless." She lifted her glass higher. "Here's to keeping the family tradition of success alive. Well, most of us anyway." "Savannah," I muttered, my voice catching in my throat, but it was too late. "Homeless! Get out!" I didn't even know which uncle yelled it first. Then came the laughter, louder this time, from cousins, neighbors, and finally, my own father. I froze. I stared down at my flimsy plastic cup, trembling in my hand, and realized I had never felt so unwanted. The chandelier light felt harsh now, every glittering reflection a reminder that this house, this family, wasn't mine anymore. In that moment, something inside me cracked. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just knew I had to find a way out. And maybe, one day, a way back at them. I didn't even wait for the party to end. My room, if I could even call it mine, was just a storage space now. I opened the old suitcase I'd kept under the bed, tossed in a few shirts, a hoodie, my laptop, and the little cash I had left. No one came to check on me. No one asked where I was going. I dragged the suitcase down the hallway, past the laughter and clinking glasses in the dining room. Savannah's voice echoed through the house. "Cheers to family!" I almost laughed. Family. Right. The night swallowed me as I stepped outside. The driveway was lined with fancy cars belonging to people who had just watched me be humiliated. Mine was a beat-up sedan, dented and dusty, parked at the very end. I tossed my bag in the back seat and slid into the driver's seat. The silence hit me first, then the cold. I leaned the seat back, staring through the windshield at the orange halo of the streetlight. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. A car passed, splashing rainwater onto the curb. The world felt like it was moving on without me. The air inside the car was damp and stale, smelling faintly of old coffee and wet fabric. I wrapped my hoodie tighter around me, but the chill sank into my bones anyway. Every creak of the car felt like it was whispering, "You don't belong anywhere." I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but every sound kept me awake. The hum of traffic in the distance, the thud of a car door slamming somewhere, the memory of laughter ringing in my head. Somewhere between awake and asleep, the pain shifted. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was empty, hollow in a way that felt cold but clear. That's when it hit me. I had never really been part of that family, not as a son, not as a brother. I was just a prop, a reminder of failure they needed to feel perfect. Their family picture needed a shadow, and I had been it for too long. Under the hum of the streetlight, in that cold car seat, I promised myself something. If they needed me to be their scapegoat, it wouldn't be for free anymore. The first night in the car was cold. The second night, it was colder. By the third night, the cold wasn't just in the air. It was in me. I woke up to the sound of rain tapping against the windshield. Slow at first, then harder, until water started sliding down the glass in long, trembling streaks. I'd stuffed a hoodie under my head, but it was damp now, like everything else I owned. The smell inside the car was turning sour. Wet clothes, fast food wrappers, The kind of smell that seeps into your skin and makes you feel dirty no matter how much you wipe your face with napkins from a gas station bathroom. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror one morning, and for a moment, I didn't recognize the person looking back. My hair had started to mat into uneven clumps. Dark circles sank under my eyes. My t-shirt clung to my chest with a sour dampness. I looked like a ghost who had borrowed my body. Days blurred together in the car. I parked in a different spot each night, behind grocery stores, in empty parking lots, under bridges, anywhere I thought I could be invisible. Not once did my phone light up with a call or a text from my parents, or Savannah, or anyone who shared a last name with me. It was like I had been erased, scrubbed clean from their perfect little family portrait. One evening, as I sat in the car chewing a stale granola bar, I saw a familiar face in the grocery store parking lot. It was Darren, an old friend from high school. We'd played basketball together. I'd been in his house 100 times. For a second, his eyes locked on mine. Recognition, then hesitation. And finally, he looked away. He walked straight to his shiny car and drove off. I watched his taillights disappear, and the granola bar tasted like dirt in my mouth. That's when I realized people don't just abandon you when you fall. They pretend they never knew you in the first place. Nights were the worst. When the rain seeped through the cracked rubber lining of the car doors. When I had to curl up tighter to keep warm. When the world outside turned to silver shadows and cold air. I could hear the faint laughter of other people, families behind warm windows, their lives untouched by mine. Meanwhile, my own family, the people who had humiliated me, cast me out, and laughed while they did it, were probably sitting in that glowing house, pretending I had never existed. And somehow, that hurt more than the hunger or the cold. Being invisible to the people who were supposed to love you is a pain that doesn't fade with time. It sharpens. By the end of that first week, I wasn't sure which was heavier, the wet clothes clinging to my skin, or the silence of the people I used to call family. And that's when something in me snapped. The sadness was still there. But under it, a spark of anger finally lit up. This chapter closes on MC's emotional rock bottom, turning from despair to the first flicker of anger, setting the stage for the survival and transformation arc in the next chapters. After a week of sleeping in my car, I finally admitted to myself, I couldn't survive like this forever. I scrolled through my phone, searching for help I had sworn I'd never need until I found it, a women's shelter, 15 minutes away. I drove there with my last quarter tank of gas. My hands shook as I rang the buzzer. The door opened, and a woman with kind eyes and silver hair stepped out. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked. I almost said yes, almost lied, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just nodded, and she said, "Come inside." The shelter smelled like laundry detergent and warm soup. A dozen other women sat in the common room, some reading, some dozing off, all carrying the same quiet heaviness I felt. As the intake worker filled out my forms, she told me stories in a soft voice. "You'd be surprised how many girls come here after being kicked out by their own families," she said. "Some for ridiculous reasons. One girl, her parents threw her out because her sister didn't want to share a birthday party. Can you imagine?" I felt my chest tighten. It was different. But not that different. I wasn't alone in this kind of pain. And somehow, that made it a little easier to breathe. I got a clean blanket, a shower, a small bed under a roof. It wasn't home, but it was safe. The next morning, I downloaded 3 delivery apps on my phone. I drove my beat-up car to strangers' houses, dropping off burgers and pizza boxes, earning just enough for gas and sandwiches. By the second week, I found a part-time office job, paperwork and data entry. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And for the first time since the night of Savannah's party, I felt a seed of something small but real growing inside me. One night, after a long shift, I lay in my narrow shelter bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me, and whispered to the dark, "They will never see me broken, not ever again." Days turned into weeks, and the world slowly became less heavy. I worked mornings at the office, afternoons delivering food, and evenings cleaning the shelter's kitchen in exchange for staying longer. Every dollar I earned felt like a brick in the foundation of a new life. I learned to stretch $20 across 3 days to hunt for thrift store clothes, to survive without leaning on anyone, especially them. Late at night, I scrolled through my phone, half out of habit, half out of self-torture. Savannah's face was everywhere. Her Instagram was a shrine to perfection. Champagne brunches, luxury handbags, smiling selfies in front of the house I used to sleep in. Even LinkedIn showed her latest triumphs. Savannah Reyes, marketing director, youngest in the company's history. Hundreds of likes, dozens of congratulatory comments, and then there was Mom, commenting under every post. "Our brilliant daughter! We're so proud!" I stared at the glowing screen in the dark, the bitterness rising like bile. But I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. Because somewhere in that quiet shelter room, a new thought began to take shape. I don't need to destroy them. I just need to live well enough that the truth destroys them for me. They wanted a shadow, someone to carry their shame. Instead, I would become the light they couldn't hide from. I started small, a new LinkedIn profile without my last name. No mention of my family, just me, my skills, and my story, rewritten as if I were born the day I walked out of that house. I signed up for free courses online, sharpening everything I had let rust away during my years in that cold home. Excel formulas, social media marketing, even public speaking, because I knew one day my voice would matter. Every night, I whispered to myself, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, step by step. And slowly, the girl they called homeless was building a life they would never be able to touch. One quiet Thursday night, after finishing another double shift, I collapsed onto the thin cot in the shelter's corner. As usual, I scrolled through social media, a guilty habit I couldn't break, and there she was, Savannah Reyes, perfect as ever. This time, it wasn't just a brunch photo or a smug vacation selfie. It was bigger. Honored to be nominated for the Women in Justice Award. The caption was glowing, a cascade of heart emojis, supportive comments from people who didn't know the truth. Women in Justice. I almost laughed out loud. Justice? The same sister who laughed while my parents threw me out? Who turned my humiliation into her birthday entertainment? I stared at the screen, and for the first time in months, anger didn't feel like poison. It felt sharp, precise, useful. I opened an old folder in my cloud drive. Dusty digital memories, photos, videos, screenshots I had taken over the years, most of them from that one night. Savannah in her shimmering silver dress, arm raised with a champagne glass, the crowd laughing as she called me homeless and told me to get out. And in the background, Mom and Dad, laughing louder than anyone. I watched the clip 3 times. My hands didn't shake. My breath was steady. This wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really. This was about truth. I won't destroy her with my words, I whispered to myself. The truth will do it for me. And for the first time, I opened a new private folder on my laptop and titled it with a single word. light. Because soon, I wouldn't be the shadow anymore. I spent the next week moving like a ghost. Work, shelter, laptop, repeat. The world thought I was gone, forgotten. But in the quiet, I was building something. Every night, I combed through every corner of social media. Old Instagram highlights, Snapchat stories saved by mutual friends, even blurry videos from guests I didn't know. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. The champagne toast, the laughter, the moment Savannah raised her glass and called me homeless in front of my entire family. Then I began to add context. Screenshots of her flawless posts, articles praising her as a young leader, and every single lie she'd built her image on. I wasn't angry anymore. I was meticulous, calm, focused. One night, under the dull yellow light of the shelter's common room, I opened my email. 2. Women in Justice Award Committee, CC, keynote speaker. I attached the folder, photos, videos, screenshots. Then I wrote only 2 sentences. This is how she treats her own blood when they're at their lowest. This is the leadership she celebrates. No signature, no threats, just the truth, delivered like a scalpel. I hovered over send. In that moment, I imagined Savannah in her perfect home, surrounded by walls she thought were unshakable. And then I clicked. A quiet, final click. No fireworks, no shouting, just the sound of a silent trap closing. The ballroom was carved from gold and glass. Crystal chandeliers spilled light across silk gowns and sharp tuxedos. I watched from the balcony, invisible in a sea of perfection. Below, Savannah glowed. Every camera seemed to chase her. She shook hands, laughed, posed like she owned the night. The perfect daughter. The perfect lie. The award ceremony began. Polished voices filled the air, celebrating courage, leadership, and justice. I sat back in the shadows, hands folded, heart steady. Then came the moment. The host smiled at the crowd. We would like to acknowledge a sudden change in our finalists. One nominee has been withdrawn due to actions that do not reflect the values of this award. Whispers rippled across the room. Phones lit up, heads turned, and then the camera cut to Savannah. Her smile froze, just for a fraction of a second, enough for anyone to see the truth crack through her flawless mask. Her name was never spoken, but the silence was deafening, and I knew everyone understood. I watched as guests began scrolling through their phones. First came the gasps, then the side eyes, then the slow, poisonous wave of whispers spreading like smoke. The next morning, the internet detonated. A headline, front and center on every social feed. Local attorney caught mocking homeless sibling at birthday party. Beneath it, a video clip of Savannah, champagne in hand, laughing as my father's voice shouted, "Homeless! Get out!" The world that had once adored her now saw the version I had known all along. A woman who built her image on justice while crushing her own blood for sport. I didn't post a single word. I didn't need to. The truth was louder than any revenge could ever be. The keys trembled in my hand as I unlocked the door to my first apartment. It was nothing fancy. Just a one-bedroom box with peeling paint and creaky floors. But it was mine. I set down the single duffel bag that had once been my only home, then unfolded a second-hand sofa I'd bought with my first paycheck. For the first time in months, I wasn't sitting in the driver's seat of my car, wondering if headlights would wake me. I lit a single candle on the windowsill. Its glow spilled across the empty walls, and I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. I scrolled through my phone. There it was. A string of unread messages from numbers I knew by heart. Mom. We should talk. Dad. Things are complicated. Call us. Savannah. Please, I need to explain. I stared at the screen for a long time. My thumb hovered. And then I locked the phone. No reply. They weren't reaching out for me. They were reaching out for themselves. The same people who couldn't look at me when I was cold, hungry, and humiliated. I leaned back on my new sofa and whispered to the empty room. They needed me to break to feel like they were standing tall. But the moment I stood up, they were the ones who fell. I closed my eyes and smiled, listening to the quiet hum of a home that finally felt like mine. For the first time, I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their apology. I was free.